Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer, and I have another tale from Old Sussex by Philip Mercer. This is The Witch in the Ditch. The year is 1721. Sarah Page, a spinster of 68, lies dead in a ditch. Her head is split open, and her blood mixes with the cold, stagnant water of a ditch that runs beside her house. Oliver Gatting is riding to Billingshurst in West Sussex along the old Roman road Stane Street that ran from Chichester to London. He carries a message for the innkeeper of the Six Bells at Billingshurst. Gatting passes the dead woman, taking in the scene. Clearly she is dead, and he doesn't stop, for his message for the innkeeper at Billingshurst is urgent. However, as he continues, he spies a limping man about 500 yards up the road. Curiously, this fella is also covered in blood. Again, Gatting doesn't stop and continues with his mission. The limping man is a Thomas Itchiner, an apprentice stonemason from Horsham. He approaches Billingshurst cautiously and attempts to get through, but is stopped by a man on a horse that passed him earlier and a bunch of farmhands. They surround him and apprehend him, and eventually is taken to Horsham and arrested by the constable there for the murder of Sarah Page. At the assizes, a month or so later, Thomas Itchiner is found guilty. And in September of that year, he is brought out onto Gaoler's Green in the Carfax at Horsham and hanged in front of a large jeering crowd. A broadsheet, which is now lost to antiquity, but whose contents apparently was given verbatim to Philip Mercer and published in his Tales of Olde Sussex compendium, gives the true and honest account of Thomas Itchiner, apprentice, and his horrific and terrible crime of murder against Sarah Page at Five Oaks Cottage on the old Roman road to Chichester. Thomas Itchiner was apprenticed to John Stone, a master stonemason, but apparently he didn't amount to much, being lazy, often drunk and argumentative. John Stone, it seems, continued to keep Thomas Itchiner on, and I think mainly because he felt he could bully him and pay him very little. However, Thomas was soon fed up with this arrangement and decided he was going to run away, and it seems that he had plans to go to Bristol. We don't know why he wanted to go to Bristol. Maybe he had a job lined up for him, or he thought there was a better prospect of better work in Bristol, or indeed that he could get a passage to America. We don't know. However, he wasn't going to go directly to Bristol across country. In those days, that's a very long journey, but worse than that, the roads were pretty terrible. So he was going to go down to Portsmouth, which perhaps was bad enough anyway, directly on foot. He had no money. He must have had a contact there, for he seems to think that he could get a passage around the coast from Portsmouth to Bristol by being part of a team that quarried ballast, which was loaded onto the ships there. One afternoon, he steals some of his master's best tools, wraps them up in leather and puts them in his bag. Then he makes his way to Portsmouth on foot. Becoming weary after 13 miles from Horsham, he arrives at Five Oaks. From there, it's only 1.5 miles to Billingshurst. Now, he doesn't want to go to Billingshurst because it's quite a busy village and he'll be seen. But at Five Oaks, he knows there is this unusual rumour. There's a house that's half built of stone and half of wood, and in it lives a woman. This woman is said to be a witch, and anyone that she has a disagreement with as they pass on the old Roman road, she turns to stone. The story is that she turns them to stone because she wants to complete her house out of stone rather than half of wood. However, the other thing that's said about her is that she will offer travellers a bed for the night and food on the table if they will do her some chores, such as cut wood for the fire. Because Thomas Itchener knows that he can't stay overnight in Billingshurst, somewhere where he could easily secure a room, he has nowhere else to stay and thinks that he'll risk staying at the old woman's place. It's dark by the time he gets there, and he agrees to the old woman to help her and do some chores, but he'll cut the logs at first light. But being the blackguard that he has no intention of helping out, and decides to rise early before the old woman wakes. But Sarah Page is no fool, for the moment that Thomas Itchener steps out of the front door in the morning, he finds her waiting for him, with axe in hand, pointing to the log pile. An argument ensues, for Thomas wants to get going, but the old woman will have none of it, and points to the logs. "If you don't do my bidding, I will turn you to stone," she says, lunging at him. Together they fall over, and in the ditch Thomas twists his ankle. Now his anger is enraged. He grabs the axe and brings it crashing down on the old woman's head, killing her instantly. Looking down at the bloodied woman, he pushes her into the ditch and limps off. And so in court, his plea had been self-defence for fear of being turned into stone. And thus Thomas Itchener was found guilty of murder and hanged to much applause by the crowds of Sussex. And later, as was the custom, his body was taken and covered in tar and bound in chains, and then hung from a gibbet as a warning at Five Oaks, just within sight of Sarah Page's house. Now, if this was all, the story would be macabre enough. However, there is an interesting epilogue. You see, sometime later, about 2 or 3 weeks, the spinster's house mysteriously caught fire. All the wood was destroyed, but what was left was just the stones. When the fire had died down and the smoke had cleared, the villagers could get closer to inspect. What they found amongst the rubble was something shocking, for there in the middle of one of the rooms seemed to be a stone effigy of a man with a hammer and chisel, the sign of a stonemason. And what makes this story even more mysterious is that the tar-covered body of Thomas Itchener, hanging in chains on the gibbet, had disappeared that morning. Nobody knows quite what happened to the statue, the effigy of the man with the hammer and chisel, but rumours went round that the villagers smashed it up for fear that it was cursed. And there is another story from Tales of Olde Sussex by Philip Mercer, published in 1834. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Do follow, like and subscribe, and there'll be more stories from Philip Mercer's book. But in the meantime, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.